no birth, and causation. False discrimination, no birth, and causation. Enough has already been said about the Lankavatara's conception of habit energy or memory and the principle of individuation. Let us now proceed to see what is meant by discrimination and in what relation this stands to the doctrine of mind only, and also to the Buddhist idea of no birth, which is characteristic of the transcendental citta. The following quotation may be illuminating. Inspired by the spiritual power of the Buddha, Mahamati asked him again, "What is the distinctive feature of the Buddhist doctrine of no birth and no annihilation? For do not all the philosophers teach also that the creative agents are neither born nor annihilated?" Which corresponds to the Buddhist teaching that akasa, aprati samkhya and nirvala dhatu are not subject to birth, nor to annihilation. The philosophers too describe the world as having been produced by causation in the hands of creators, while the Buddha describes the world as being born depending upon ignorance, desire, karma, and discrimination. Whether creation by causation, or dependence, the difference is in names only. Thus both the Buddha and the philosophers proceed to teach the birth of external objects by external causation. And thus there is no distinction to be made between the Buddha's and the philosophers' theory. The philosophers assert that the 9 substances containing such as atom, pradhana, isvara, and prajapati are neither born nor annihilated, while according to the Buddha all existence is subject neither to birth nor to annihilation, and neither being nor non-being is attainable. The elements again, according to the Buddha, are said to be indestructible, and their substance is neither born nor annihilated. While they circulate through the various paths of existence, they retain their self-nature. But this distinction concerning the elements and their transformations is also upheld by all the philosophers as well as by the Buddha himself. For this reason, the Buddhist doctrine has nothing distinctive. If there is anything distinctive, pray tell me this distinguishing point, as unlike the doctrine held by the philosophers. If there is nothing distinctive in the Buddhist doctrine, the philosophers may also be said to belong to the group of Buddhas because of their doctrine of causes that are neither born nor annihilated. It was stated by the Buddha that not more than one Tathagata would appear in the world at one time and at one locality. But if what goes before obtains, there are Tathagatas more than one because there is no distinctive point in the Buddha's own doctrine. To this answers the Buddha, "O Mahamati, my doctrine of no birth and no annihilation is not the same as that held by the philosophers, nor is the doctrine of birth and impermanence. For what reason? According to the philosophers, the theory of self-substance is upheld, and there really obtains something that is neither born nor transformed. But mine is above the category of being and non-being, and abandoning the notion of birth and destruction. I talk of that which is neither existent nor non-existent, that which has no more existence than the multitudinousness of things that appear like Maya or in a dream." What is meant by not existing? It is meant that the self-nature or self-substance of things existent with individual marks and graspable by the senses has no reality, because they are perceived and not perceived, they are grasped and not grasped. For this reason, all things existent are really neither existent nor non-existent. When, however, it is realized that what is presented to one's view is no more than the mind itself, one knows how to establish oneself where discrimination ceases to rise, and the world stops its laboring. The ignorant make effort to discriminate, but the wise do not. The ignorant because of discrimination commit the error of taking non-existent things for realities. This world is like the Gandharva's castle or a magically created person. It is like the case of a childish-minded person who, seeing magically created people, a multitude of beings, and merchants going in and out of the Gandharva's castle, take them for realities, imagining, they are going in, they are coming out, though in fact there is no going in or coming out whatever. This is indeed due to their discrimination, which leads them to the erroneous viewing of existence. And so with the ignorant, their view of birth or of no birth is an error. Whether things are created or uncreated, they are no more than magically created figures. And of magically created figures neither birth nor annihilation may be predicated, for no category of existence and non-existence is applicable to them. So with all things in the world, they have nothing to do with birth and destruction. Only the ignorant, cherishing the ideas grown out of falsehood, imagine their birth and annihilation. It is not so with the wise. By falsehood it is meant that the self-nature of existence is not discriminated as it is in itself. It is no other than this. When it is discriminated in any other way than yatkabkutam, there is an attachment to what is taken for the self-nature of existence, and one fails to see the solitary, and because of this failure there is no release from discrimination. For this reason, O Mahamati, the view based on no appearance is superior to that of appearance, for the latter causes birth and is not preferable. No appearance means the ceasing of discrimination, and I state that nirvana means no birth. O Mahamati, by nirvana I mean the seeing into the abode where the meaning of existence is understood in its truthfulness. The abandoning of all discrimination which takes place in the mind and what belongs to it, and the realization of the supreme wisdom which lies in the inmost consciousness of the Tathagata. This I call nirvana. Proofs for the mind only. So far no special efforts have been made to prove why there is mind itself and no external realities. The Lankavatara is not a philosophical treatise and naturally does not profess to prove anything specifically in connection with the teaching or statement it propounds. But as we peruse the sutra, we cannot help coming across certain attempts at advancing proofs for its main thesis. Svachitid Physiamatram. We will try to gather up these attempts already alluded to, though sporadically in previous pages, and present them in a more systematic way. 1. That things are not what they seem is proved from the analogy of a dream and Magikai Creatabans. 2. When Ravalna, king of Larika, saw images of the Buddha all around him, which later disappeared, he thought, could this be a dream? Or a magical phenomenon like the castle of the Gandharvas? He reflected again, this is no other than the projection of my own mental creations. As we do not truly understand things as they are, we separate the seen from the seer, thus producing a world of dualities. Where there is no false discrimination, one really sees the Buddha. As long as we are in the dream, we do not realize that we are all dreaming, that we are slaves of false discrimination. 4. It is only when we are awakened from it that we know where we have been. The analogy of dream is quite a strong argument against the reality of an external world, but it is not at all effective for them who are actually dreaming. So it is with magical creations. The Indians have been noted for their skill in the art of conjuration, and there are no people among whom the use of mantrams and dhranas is so universal. Hence the frequent allusions to magic in the literature of Mahayana and Hinayana Buddhism. The magician is so wonderfully proficient in making the spectators see objects where there are none whatever. As long as they are under his spell, there is no way of making them realize that they are the victims of hypnotism. The favorite analogies besides the dream and magic that are resorted to in the Lankavatara to show the unreality of objects seen externally and internally are: 1. Paintings. A hair circle to the dim-eyed. A revolving fire wheel, a bubble looking like a sun, reflected trees in water, images in a mirror, an echo, fata morgana, a mechanical man, a floating cloud, and lightning. 2. All things are relative and have no svabhava which would eternally and absolutely distinguish one from another. Things are nothing but relations. Analyze them into their component elements and there will be nothing left. And are not all relations the constructions of the mind? Thus the citta seeing itself reflected is due to reflection and discrimination. So far no harm is done, for the mental constructions are perceived as such and there are no wrong judgments about them. The trouble begins at once when they are adhered to as externally real, having their own values independent of the valuing mind itself. This is why the Sutra emphasizes the importance of looking at things yathabhutam, as they really are. When they are thus looked at yathabhutam, they are no more than the mind itself. The principle of relativity creates a world of individuals, but when it is transcended, there is mind itself. 3. Names and images are mere signs and have no reality whatever in themselves, for they belong to the imagination. Imagination is another name for false discrimination, which is the mischievous agency of creation. The fact of one mind is thus buried in the differentiation of individual existences. Hence Jalpo Hai Tradehatu Kajal. Ka Yonal. Again, according to words they discriminate wrongfully and make statements concerning reality. And because of these statements they are burned in hell. How much we owe in our daily intercourse to words. And yet what grave consequences, not only logically but spiritually, we suffer from words. The light of the mind is altogether beclouded in and with words. The mind has, indeed, created words, and now taking these words for realities independent of their creator, it gets entangled in them, and, as the Sutra says, is swallowed up in the waves of transmigration. The ignorant take what is presented by the mind itself for objective realities which do not really exist, and because of this wrong representation, discrimination is falsified. This, however, is not the case with the wise. The latter know that names and signs and symbols are to be taken for what they are intended from the beginning, while the ignorant cling to them as if they were realities and let their minds blindly follow up this clinging. Thus, they get attached to a variety of forms and entertain the view that there are really, I, and, mine, and, by so doing, hold fast to appearances in their multiplicity. Because of these attachments, their higher wisdom is obstructed. Greed, anger, and infatuation are stirred up, and all kinds of karma are committed. As these attachments are repeatedly committed, the ignorant find themselves hopelessly enwrapped within the cocoons woven out of their wrong discriminations. They are swallowed up in the waves of transmigration, and do not know how to go ahead in the work of emancipation, for they turn round and round like the water wheel. It is owing to their ignorance, indeed, that they fail to realize that all things, like Maya, the shining mote, or the moonlight on water, have no self-substance, that there is nothing in them to take hold of as me and mine. That all things are unreal, born of wrong discrimination. That ultimate reality is above the dualism of marked and marking, and the course of birth, staying, and disappearance. That all that is manifested is due to the discriminating by one's own mind of what is presented to it. Imagining that the world is born of Isvara, time, atom, or universal soul, the ignorant are addicted to names and forms, thereby allowing themselves to be swayed by them. 4. That which is unborn has nothing to do with causation, there is no creator, all is nothing but the construction of the mind, as I teach that which is unborn. That there is no creator such as Isvara or Pradhana or Brahma is one of the principal theses of Mahayana Buddhism. According to the Lankavatara, the notion of a creator is due to discrimination, which always tends to lead the mind in a wrong direction. When it is seen that all is citamatra, that which is unborn will present itself instead. Mahamati was somewhat skeptical about this, wondering if the master's teaching was not after all similar to that of the philosophers. As was quoted a few pages back, and after this quotation the Buddha goes on to repeat more or less the same idea in the Gathas as usual. In order to remove the idea of birth and to attain that of no birth, I teach the doctrine of no cause which is not comprehended by the ignorant. That all is unborn does not mean that things do not exist, but that they are like the Gandharva's castle, like a dream, and Maya, and that their existence is without cause. Tell me how things are in their self-nature unborn and empty. When existence is freed from aggregations, no intelligence will take hold of it, and therefore I declare that it is empty, unborn, and without self-substance. Each individual aggregation is seen as real, but it is no real existence as is maintained by the philosophers, for when analyzed there is no aggregation. Dream, hair circle, Maya, Gandharva, castle, and mirage, they are seen without causal reality. So with the world of particulars. By suppressing cause theory, the no-birth is accomplished. When the no-birth is accomplished, my eyes do not perish. When no cause theory is announced, the philosophers are horrified. How? By what cause? Why? And where is birth to be regarded as without cause? When existence is regarded as neither causal nor non-causal, we turn away from the view of those who hold that there are actual birth and destruction. Do we speak of no birth because of non-existence, or because it is to be regarded as mutually dependent? Or because of existence being mere name with no reality behind it? Pray tell me. No birth not because of non-existence, nor because existence is to be regarded as mutually dependent, nor because there is a name for existence, nor because name has no reality behind it. That all is unborn does not belong to the realm of Sravakas, Pratyekabuddhas, or philosophers, or of those bodhisattvas who are still on the seventh stage. I state that all is unborn, because such predicates as cause or dependence are inapplicable here, because no creatorship is to be assumed here. The no-birth is constructed on the truth of the mind only. 5. The logical necessity of reaching the ultimate notion of unity has made the author of the Lankavatara accept the doctrine of mind only, instead of that of matter only. When no creator is recognized and all forms of dualism are set aside as not in accord with the real state of things, there remain two ways for achieving the unification of thought, realism and idealism. And as the Lankavatara denies the reality of an external world, or outside objects that are characterized with multitudinousness, the doctrine of mind only seems to be the natural conclusion. The philosophical thesis of the present sutra is thus an absolutely idealistic monism. To take cognizance of the manifoldness of an objective world is relative knowledge, while to rise above this cognizance is transcendental knowledge. Again, this transcendental knowledge is not within the reach of the two vehicles, as it, indeed, goes beyond the realm of beings. The knowledge of Sravakas moves by attaching itself to beings which they take for realities, while the pure transcendental knowledge of the Tathagata penetrates into the truth of the mind only. Thus it is evident that as far as the Lankavatara is concerned, the mind or self-mind is the principle of unity. While the objective world disturbs this unity and makes the mind, thus disturbed, perceive manifoldness within its own body. It then clings to these individualizing disturbances as real, thus losing its original purity or unity altogether in them. This is the source of spiritual tribulations. 6. The strongest of all the proofs that can be advanced for the statement that the world is mind itself, is that of intuitive knowledge. While this is what is final in all form of conviction, speculative or practical, the force is especially strongly felt in religious truths, which are not founded upon reasoning but upon immediate perception. So with the Lankavatara, its thesis is derived from its immediacy and not from its intellectual precision. Paramartha, the ultimate principle of knowledge, is not dependent upon anything logically reasoned. It is, I see and I believe. Paramartha is what is realized within oneself by means of the supreme wisdom of the Tathagata. Or rather, it is the supreme wisdom itself. For the awakening of this wisdom means the grasping of the ultimate principle, which is the same thing as the realization within one's inmost consciousness of the truth that there is nothing in the world but mind. This truth is beyond the realm of discursive knowledge. This special knowledge, which may be called intuitive, is variously referred to throughout the Lankavatara. To mention just a few: Parana, Abhisambodha, Svapra Tyatmabuddhi, Vikaraparapraya, Adhigamavaboda, Yathartath Ya Mudra, Nirabhisabud Dhi, Samatha Jnana, etc. etc. All go to describe the kind of knowledge which sees into the truth of the mind only. The wise do not cherish in that which is confused any thought either perverted or not perverted. O Mahamati, if they form any notion at all about it, there will be no supreme wisdom taking hold of reality. By this we know that knowledge that takes hold of the ultimate cannot be brought into a system of categories. For if anything is to be said about it, it turns into an idea of it, and the real thing is no more there, and what is left behind is nothing but confusion or delusion. Attachment to realities as having self-substance is produced from not knowing that there is nothing but that which is projected and perceived by one's own mind. Avabodha is really awakening. Something is awakened within the consciousness, and it is at once recognized that all is mind. The awakening is above the dualism of to be and not to be, the latter being due to false discrimination. The awakening is, therefore, the sight of the ultimate principle of existence as it is in itself and not determined by any form of confusion or otherness. This is what is meant by to see yathabhutam. It is by this awakening, which takes place in the inmost consciousness, not as the result of logical inference but as self-realization, that the Buddha makes the following statement. Between my enlightenment and my nirvana I have not uttered a word. Indeed, not to say a word is the teaching of the Buddha. The Lankavatara goes on further to state that there is a twofold hidden meaning in the teaching of the Buddha, and when this is understood, all is understood. What are the two? Reality is realized in one's inmost consciousness, and reality is abiding since eternity. These two realities are not two but one, which is to say, the truth subjectively perceived is the truth in objective existence. And the mind only is meant to designate this fundamental unity and purity of all things, uncontaminated by Bhranti, Vikalpa, Viparyasa, etc. In this unity and purity all the Buddhas are one, and also all sentient beings if they are only enlightened and awakened to this fundamental truth. The following from the Lankavatara is the most significant passage in this connection, where the logic and the psychology of the present sutra are perfectly synthesized in the intuitive knowledge or the inner realization of all the Tathagatas of the past, present, and future. What is meant by reality as abiding since eternity? It is reality that is in me since eternity. It is like gold or silver or pearl that lies buried in a mine, O Mahamati. Regardless of the appearance or the non-appearance of the Tathagata, the realm of the Dharma endures, the reality or that which constitutes the essence of all things endures, there is the continuity of the Dharma, there is the fixedness of the Dharma. Lieutenant is, O Mahamati, like unto a passageway leading to an ancient city. O Mahamati, suppose there is a man roaming about in the wilderness, who descries a perfect passageway leading to an ancient city. He proceeds to go into that city, and entering there and resting there he enjoys all the pleasant doings that are going on in the city. Now do you think, O Mahamati, that the passageway leading to the city and its manifold affairs were constructed by that man? Said Mahamati, No, sire, O Blessed One. And the Blessed One continued, Just so, O Mahamati, the reality innerly attained by myself and the Tathagatas endures. It is the continuity of the Dharma, it is the fixedness of the Dharma, it is the so-ness, realness, and trueness of things. There is a reality that endures, it is the realm beyond the ken of discrimination. It is the mind itself but freed from the entanglements of speculation and imagination. It reveals itself through our empirical consciousness when our empirical consciousness goes beyond itself, that is, when it transcends dualism. Dharmata or reality, then, is no other than the supreme wisdom. Ayajnana, realized inwardly by and in oneself. When this realization comes to one, no proofs are now needed for the doctrine of mind only. As Zen declares, it is like drinking water yourself. You know without being told by others whether it is cold or warm. Some concluding remarks. Having enumerated these considerations in the Lankavatara that lead to the thought of the mind only, let us make this remark in the way of concluding this part of the present chapter. It is this. The Lankavatara was not written with the view of establishing a philosophical thesis to be called pure idealistic monism. Its central motive was to make us realize that enlightenment comes when we are detached from the tyranny of language and discrimination. When we enter into the realm of anusrava, when, going beyond all philosophical reasonings, we stand on the inner ground of consciousness and shine out in our own inner brightness. This being the case, as I have already remarked elsewhere, it would be unreasonable of us to expect anything systematically or logically thoroughgoing in the Lankavatara. Even when all the threads of logic are found in confusion, the Lankavatara will still insist on the doctrine of mind only, saying that it is a fact of immediate perception and that enlightenment or spiritual freedom comes upon one after realizing this fact within oneself. It will then be the business of the philosophers to